15th. I'll call for roll call.
Mr. Albright.
Here.
Mr. Arnold.
Here.
Ms. Banks. Ms. Bell.
Here.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Carter.
Here.
Ms. Clark. Dr. Elhide. Ms. Friedman.
Here.
Ms. Harding.
Here.
Ms. Howe.
Here.
Ms. Mendoza-Locke.
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Here.
Dr. Sada. Major White.
Here.
Vote scores. Here. All right, we have the recognition of visitors. Okay, Richard.
Shannon Fish, staff. Julie Rappaport, staff.
All Recovery Council, St. Paul Community Center, and MPI Board of Trustees.
All right, thank you very much. And now we'll have the determination of items to be removed from the consent agenda. I've named them. Meeting minutes from March the 18th. P&O committee reports consisting of budget report February, fiscal year 25 financial statements, 120-day notice appeal approval.
Can we remove that, please? 6B.
6B being removed. NPI budget revision. Almas workforce development grant. And the executive nominating committee report consisting of mental health recovery service board governance policies and review. I have a motion to remove the items listed with exclusion of 120-day notice appeal.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Major White.
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza-Locke.
Yes.
Ms. Howe.
Yes.
Ms. Harding.
Yes.
Ms. Friedman.
Yes.
Ms. Carter.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Bell.
Yes.
Ms. Banks.
Yes.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Mr. Albright.
Yes.
Motion approved. And I will do the 120-day notice appeal.
All right, so if you want to turn your back to page 11, these are the ones we went over at the planning and oversight. You'll remember NAMI, Toledo, we had proposed a 5% reduction overall. However, after being their specific budgets, our challenge was with the Family Navigator not meeting their outcome, and we agreed on a 5% reduction for that Family Navigator program. Task of Northwest Ohio, after thorough discussion with them, we decided to reduce their reentry program by the amount they would have dedicated to going into CCNO. They've had problems for many years trying to get in there, so we're just removing that requirement for that program. Harbor, this was related to the older adult wellness program. After just thorough discussion with them, we decided to refocus the program and reduce their total allocation to $135,000, which their program will still focus on older adults, but more on some education, linkage to treatment, and promoting wellness for that population. NPI PATH, they have since resolved their corrective action plan, so this motion kind of clears it up so we can move forward with contracting with them for the next fiscal year. And finally, Unison Health. Again, we're familiar with the recovery housing needing certification. They have submitted their certification to Ohio Recovery Housing, and they're just in the queue with them to be go through the certification process. So this motion is once they're certified per Ohio Revised Code requirements, we will be able to move forward with the contract into the next fiscal year.
All right. So the motions are listed in the middle of page 11, over to page 12. Which one did you want to?
I'll just abstain on the whole.
Okay, I think we can take them all together. can we not?
We could do a couple of different things. If you just want to abstain the task, we could take the other four together.
Whatever is most efficient, I don't care. You don't need my vote to pass.
Okay.
Well, yes, we do.
Well,
We can just take them all
No.
together.
So we'll take them all together.
So for the record, make sure that we understand it. It's the Recovery Services Board of Lucas County approves the FY '26 allocation to NAMI Greater Toledo for $337,637 for support services. Mental Health Recovery Services Board approves the FY '26 allocation of task of Northwest Ohio for $106,920 for the reentry program and removes the objective to work with CCNO. Mental Health Recovery Services Board of Lucas County approves the FY 2026 allocation to Harbor for $135,000 for the older adult wellness program and refocus the program to align closer with board priorities. Mental Health Recovery Services Board of Lucas County approves the fiscal year 2026 allocation to NPI for $239,553 for the project for assistance in transition from homelessness path, contingent upon successful completion of the corrective action plan. And the Mental Health Recovery Services Board of Lucas County approves the 2026 allocation to Unison Health for $53,195 for the recovery housing program pending successful achievement in Ohio recovery housing certification.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Questions?
Question. On the Harbor, number 3, I'm seeing reduced allocation to 135. And I see proven allocation for 135. I mean, am I missing something there?
Yeah, so we're reducing it to that amount, so that's what the amount would be for the next fiscal year.
So it is 135.
Yes.
They currently get 266, 237.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
Any other unreadiness? All right, we'll call.
Mr. Albright,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Abstain.
Ms. Banks, Ms. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
yes.
Ms. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Friedman,
Yes.
Ms. Harding,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza Lot. Yes. Ms. Rodriguez. Yes. Major White.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, next on the agenda is in fiscal year 2026, 100 a notice of fill approval.
Yeah, so this is towards the end of your packet. Page 33, we have a couple more appeals to go through. Board staff, since this last round of appeals, we've met with 3 additional agencies, Mercy Health, UMADOC, Lucas County, Advocates for Basic People, to discuss their appeals and come to a resolution. So we met with Mercy. As you'll remember, Mercy is contracted to provide us facilitation support to the Lucas County Suicide Prevention Coalition. The recommendation was not to continue that in fiscal year 26. However, we had a good discussion with them, and we talked about focusing that funding on providing more of a program. So doing QPR, working with Boys and Girls Club, not through the coalition. So Mercy would own kind of a program that focuses on suicide prevention, and they'll maintain the funding giving them, and they are committed to seeking other funding to help support their work to do that. They're confident that this is aligned with their mission, and we felt comfortable moving forward with that. Kind of more in alignment with what we do funding programs. The next one is UMADOP of Lucas County. We propose not renewing our contract for the Opiate Education Initiative. Again, And just for the record, not because of any outcome issues, but more that we had to look at a lot of our investments more closely and consider cuts to help support our budget in the future. So UMADAP appealed the decision. In the appeal meeting, though, they expressed an interest to want to focus more on treatment services. So we've typically been funding them in the prevention realm, but they are a certified treatment provider. In last fiscal year, they have done some treatment services. However, they haven't spent any of their POS last year, so other people usually had insurance, like Medicaid to bill. So they asked to have an increase to their POS allocation to up to 75,000. Currently, they get 5,000. We had reduced that over the years because they've been doing less and less treatment. So they asked to increase that. So we agreed that that was a good use. We can do that. So the motion is to increase their allocation for the purchase of service. So those treatment services for people who are uninsured, underinsured, who meet income guidelines, who get treatment at UMADAP through that POS service. So 75,000 there. And finally, advocates for basic legal equality. This again, the proposal was not to renew their contract for the mental health impact program next fiscal year. This program does a lot of advocacy in areas that are concerning to clients who are in our system. Really great program. Again, we had to think of our board priorities. So we met with ABLE just this past week and worked on a resolution. They do a lot of great advocacy work that's still important. However, we recommend moving a little bit of that advocacy work to their government benefit program and increasing that allocation to 100,000. So they won't have the two separate programs through this recommendation. They'll focus on the government benefit program, and we'll give them about 29,000 extra to help support more advocacy through that program. So we still get to keep some of the advocacy work, still keep the benefit work, but that the other program, the mental health impact project, would not be renewed for yet next fiscal year. Nice. See some questions.
I do. I have a question regarding the government benefits program. What does that cover exactly?
So
That's
the-
such a broad statement. I just think that,
Yes. So the government benefit program is, we talked about it at Board Staff. This program specifically helps people get on government benefits through legal action.
okay,
So they, their lawyers are there and they help people get on government benefits they qualify for.
Okay.
So between the two programs, board staff really thought that that was a priority because we need people on benefits they're eligible for.
When you say benefits, what type of benefits and what is that an indigent population or is that, is there guidelines?
Yeah, so a lot of times it might be refugees seeking different types of assistance. Sometimes it's help with, maybe insurance or other things. It can be a slew of different benefits. Basically, they qualify, but there's some legal barriers to getting those.
Any other questions? All right, so,
so moved.
on the middle of page 33 and over to page 30.
Mr. Albright,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Ms. Banks. Yes. Ms. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Friedman,
Yes.
Ms. Harding. Yes. Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez. Yes. Major White.
Yes.
Elijah? Sandy's place.
So, in January, we issued an RFP for bids for the Danny's Place Administrator. Over that time, we received 2 bids, by the deadline in February, for the potential administrator. We developed a scoring committee that consisted of some board staff, board trustees, and a few regional boards and a staff member of NAMI Ohio to review the applications and score those. So the committee did that, and the scores were very close. We kind of talked about them. The good news is that the committee felt that both applicants could do the job. So, that was good. But it was splitting hairs. We interviewed both candidates, and both candidates did fairly well in the interview. So we really had to analyze kind of what did the scores say? We tried to weigh the scores so they would be more heavy in some of the more important areas, like budget and stuff. And we examined the interview responses and just talked overall kind of who gets Danny's Place. Now, they both understand it, but we felt that one candidate kind of got it a little bit more closely to what we were hoping for, and that would have been Unison. So this motion is to award Unison the contract to be the administrator for Danny's Place. This specific motion is just for 2 months because we want to get them started really quick in being part of the planning as we're finalizing some of the things for Danny's Place. So it's $25,000. It can be built up to $25,000 to be billed to us over the next couple months as they begin to kind of onboard with us as we prepare to get Danny's Place off the ground. And then in next fiscal year, we'll have a more robust contract that we'll bring to the board. But this one is going to be pretty simple, just to get us off the ground for the next 2 months and allow Unison to get started.
Is that a temporary contract? A trial base?
Not trial base. We want to get them started, and we don't have enough time to develop the full contract because the full contract will have like a sublease. So there's a lot of particulars in that contract we'll have to develop over the next couple months. But there's it would have been nice to have the administrator earlier on in this process. So we want to get them before the door, everything's finalized and before the doors open, onboarded, helping making some of the decisions that they'll later, be directly affected by as the administrator.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yep. So is it up to this board to, medical team to oversee their performance? So how do we, like, in 5 years, these are metrics that we're looking at for them to meet? How does that happen?
Well, that's all part of the discussion of the next contracts. We'll have a provider agreement with them for sure, and all of our provider agreements have metrics built into them. But also, we have the complication of a sublease. We have the lease for 15 years with the state. We need to develop and get approval through prosecutor's office and county risk management and get insurance and all that kind of stuff in line for operations, which will likely begin sometime September, October.
And the subsequent contract will be for 1 year? Or?
We'll discuss that. Normally, we're 1-year contracts, right?
Right.
So that, I think, needs to have a discussion right now. Because the first year is going to be consisting of startup, and then operations.
Yeah.
Second year is probably a better indicator of what it's going to cost. And remember, this is a regional program, so we're only responsible for a certain amount. That needs to be negotiated with the region as well. So there's a lot of moving parts to all of this.
When you say we will discuss that, is it the regional? I mean, who
We're,
is
we're
we?
negotiating with UMDOT, but I also will need to negotiate with my peers in the region as to what level of, I'm sorry, did I say UMDOT?
Yeah, you did.
Thank you. As to what percentage of the facility they think they can handle as well.
So it could be up to 15 years or something less than 15?
I don't think we would do a 15-year. I would think it's probably reasonable to do longer than 1 year, given the operation, but we don't have a lot of experience with longer-term contracts. It would defeat the purpose of having those accountability measures if we just went into a 15-year.
So that would come back to us
It all has to come back to
before. All right, thank you.
The 25,000, this initial allocation, is that for staffing up? Is that for staff time to be
That's
part
more.
of the decision-making? I guess I was.
Yeah, that's some administrative costs over the next 2 months to
Okay.
be part of the discussions.
Okay.
So it could be all of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I just needed a clearer view on that, so thank you so much.
All right.
I just want to say that with two agencies bidding for the position and both being so close, it just shows the commitment that our community has for Danny's place. I think that's commendable.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, motion to approve, page 34.
A motion?
Roll call.
Major White,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez. Yes. Ms. Mendoza Locke,
Yes.
Ms. Howe. Yes. Ms. Harding,
Yes.
Ms. Friedman,
Yes.
Ms. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mr. Albright,
Yes.
Ms. Clark. Oh, I'm sorry. Banks.
Her name is
I'm
Banks.
sorry. I skipped
Yes.
right over here. Banks. That's all right.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. All right, Scott has a director's report you want to share with us.
Yeah, I didn't put it on the agenda because I wasn't sure how fast we were going to get through everything, so I wanted to give a little bit of play in case we ran out of time with those other items, but we got through pretty fast. So I am prepared to provide a brief director's report. Everything is about the budget right now. Everything is about the state budget right now. If you guys have been around long enough, you know that this is the time where we're setting, at the state level, they're starting to hone in on what we'll get for the next 2 fiscal years, state fiscal year 26 and state fiscal year 27. The House has passed what is called the Omnibus Amendment to Sub-Bill 96. So essentially, it means there's a bunch of different changes to the sub-bill that was introduced in Finance, Senate or House Finance Committee. So they passed this bill. And I'm going to give you some overview of some of the things that were included, and because the omnibus amendment and the passing of Sub-Bill 96 now goes to the Senate for consideration. Okay, so in the sub-bill, not the omnibus bill, there was a provision that was tucked in there that prohibited Medicaid providers from seeking to be paid for a service at a rate greater than the median rate paid by private insurers for the same service. That was removed from the omnibus bill for obvious complications. First, private insurers don't cover many of the services that Medicaid would cover, so there isn't an established rate. Everybody has differing rates. How's Medicaid going to govern that? I mean, there's just a whole host of problems that would have.
Who's gonna monitor that?
Yeah, and so that was removed. It also, the omnibus amendment established penalties for violating the prohibition, including reduced payment rates for future services and the rate for prior payments that was removed as well. So if somebody violated that, there was some substantial penalties. Those penalties were removed as well. That was the number one priority of our associations, both the provider association and the board, was to get those two provisions removed from the sub-bill. It would have caused significant problems with our provider network, and mainly those providers who deal with the most acute patients. So we're glad that that was removed. There were a few other amendments that impact us that will, we'll have to get some better clarity in the Senate. It requires the Department of Behavioral Health, which was formerly known as Ohio MHRSB, to collect and report data on spending, use, and outcome by ADIS boards that receive state block grants. Now, the reality is we already do that. So what is this statute trying to get at? We'll need a little bit more clarity on what is it that they think they're missing. It also prohibits ADIS boards that receive certain state funding from refusing to contract with hospitals in a board's service district. That was probably the most curious one to us at the state. And we were able to track that back to an issue that was going on in Columbus. So this was a one-off that made it into the amendment that I'm sure we'll be working with the Senate to try and get that removed. It also prohibits the distribution of Medicaid funds to provide mental health services that promote or affirm social gender transition. That is probably the more concerning one. Right? And so there'll be a lot of conversation at the Senate, in the Senate, and a lot of advocacy to try and get that changed. And then it establishes a timeline for ODM to seek and implement a Medicaid waiver to provide reentry services to incarcerated individuals. And while I didn't put it down here, it's actually incarcerated individuals within 90 days of release. So that is something that would be very beneficial. It could be a game changer for many of the local jails and state facilities to be able to bill Medicaid for that. Now, it's not lost on us that at a time when you're considering eliminating Medicaid expansion, you're also considering expanding Medicaid to different populations. So there's going to have to be some reconciling of that philosophy. But nonetheless, the extending Medicaid to a reentry population is a good thing. So we would certainly support that. So the Senate is I believe they're on spring break this weekend and next weekend, and they'll start taking up, or next week they'll start taking up and hosting hearings. I'm sure I will be down there once again doing some testimony. I was also switching gear. Is there any questions on that? Everything else that we discussed previously is relatively the same. I will say that we are hearing that the Senate is interested in looking at the language around the trigger that kills Medicaid expansion. They're looking at a little, I think they're interested in looking at a little bit of softer language. For instance, if it drops to 85, the word I heard was that they still think it's probably a really good deal for Ohio, so why would we want to kill it? Those kinds of things. That doesn't mean there wouldn't be some changes to benefit limits and things like that, but at least there's some hope on the Senate side for getting some of that language changed.
You use the term soft.
So maybe it's not, right now the trigger is 90%. If the federal FMAP, federal Medicaid, I don't know what PA stands for, percentage, allocated percentage or something, which is set at 90%. The trigger is if the feds drop below 90% of that match, expansion's dead in Ohio. Ohio Moss is, or I'm sorry, the Senate is looking at, can that language be softer? Should it be 80%? Should it be, if it drops below 90%, they'll have hearings or something, and that there won't be an automatic, or there won't be,
So it's
I don't-
more than soft advice.
yeah, I mean, I can't tell you what that language would be, other than they don't like the hard stop. So there's that. There is a lot more to come. The plan is to move it out of the Senate by the first week in June. Then it'll go to the Reconciliation Committee, which will take a couple of weeks, and then it'll go back to the House for approval, then back to the Senate for approval, and it's got to be the governor's office by June 30th, but it doesn't always have to be the governor's office by June 30th, because we've seen several years where it gets after June 30th and it goes into mid-July even sometimes. Even then, folks, even when that happens, we still locally will not know what our allocations are until sometime after that. Because we'll have to wait for allocations from Ohio Moss, which is, or Ohio Behavioral Health, whichever up being, which I think it's going to be OBH. But so there's a lot of moving parts to this. We are trying to track it as close as we can. There will be some changes. We know there will be some changes in the way we receive our money before we receive drips and drabs of specific pots of money. Do hospital access, do assertive, or do whatever, assertive treatment program, or do CPT, or do all these little nuances. We think we're just going to get block grant dollars. So we're just going to get an amount, and then they're going to say, here's the things that we want you to consider doing. So we'll be able to amend those items a little more. We're preparing for how that might look here locally now. Because we do have commitments through the 120-day notice process to continuously fund some programs, or the programs that didn't get these notices. So I think the one good thing about all of that is there has been a commitment from Ohio Moss, assuming that the budget, their budget amount stays within the framework of what's been currently requested, to hold us harmless in 26. Make the transition to block grant. There's a lot of little nuances that I'm not going to bore you with on how they determine that. Is it allocated? Is it spent? Is it, those kinds of things, and determine what our fiscal year 25 level was. But we work out all that in the background. So there's that. Before I move on, is there any questions? Clear as mud, right? That's the way it is. That's the state process. I've been through it a number of different times now. It just is murky, muddy, messy, and you just kind of roll with it. Okay, so I went down on April 9th to Columbus in support of SB 138, which is the bill that removes the 120-day notice requirements and updates other elements concerning our use of RFPs, the way we conduct audit reviews, inspections. We are supportive of the bill as it's written. The bill also creates criminal penalties for recovery houses that operate without certification. That is one of the elements that was missing, or I think it was actually stricken out of the first law that required certifications. And while we have some of that issue going on here, it is prolific in other areas of the state, mainly in southern Ohio, where houses are just popping up, they're private, they're not even calling themselves recovery housing, and they're just being fairly predatory to the recovery population. And then they close down just as fast and leave people in a lurch. And so this bill is kind of aiming at resolving some of that issue as well. I'm going to estimate that we have about 50, between 40 and 50 recovery houses, about which half are working, are not certified, and a good portion of those are working towards certification. So those aren't the problem. Those people aren't the problem. The problem is those that don't even make it on the list because they're not on anybody's radar and they just pop up. They start charging people cash to come and sit and live with them, and then make it. They're mainly non-profit or for-profits, private individuals. They're not our. Most of the recovery houses in Lucas County are run by credible organizations, many of which are our contract agencies. So, so yeah, we don't have that as big of an issue. But that doesn't mean that we don't see some pop up from time to time, and some that we have seen were just they didn't understand what the law meant. So then they worked through the process. So I won't say that we're totally absolved from that, but we're in a much better spot than a lot of other places. And we have a lot of other houses that if we did have several of them shut down, that there would be the ability to absorb those populations without going into the homeless system, because we don't want to do that. We don't want to mess with that setback in recovery. So there's that. I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news, but House Bill 28 passed the House 2 weeks ago and is now on its way through the Senate. House Bill 28 eliminates the ability to run a replacement levy after October 1st. All indications are it is not going to have a problem getting through the Senate, and the governor will likely sign it. So anybody who's considering putting a replacement levy on the general election ballot in November probably want to think again. Those that are going to be in 2 weeks, I think May ballot are safe. But anybody after that, they better be looking at Plan B, because they're running out of data. The last time we ran a replacement levy, was 2008. The next time we're on a levy, next time we're due to be on the ballot is in 2028. So folks, if you can't run a replacement levy, which essentially brings your current millage up to current property values, you're stuck with either running new at an enhanced rate, because nobody would run I guess you could run a new at 1 mil and get the benefit of it if you had a expiring 1 mil, or you run a renewal plus new. So let's say we have a 1 mil that is collecting property values at 2008. We could seek that renewal and then adjust the new under, to account for the new property values. So it could be 1 mil renewal plus 0.37 new. And it's all in the same question. Now that's dangerous if you wait till the last moment, right? So if we were to do something like that, we would want to go in the primary. And then if it didn't pass, we would reconsider what we were doing in the general election. So you want to take more than one swipe at it if that's the case. Or you just do a new and try and figure it out, right? Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that until 28, or probably 27. And remember the actions that you're taking here now with our 120-day notice process and carving modest amounts out of our budget are setting us up so that we have options in future years, so that we consider, is it something that we want to do as a straight renewal, or is there something? So what I'm hopeful is that our spending is controlled enough that it provides us options and discretion on what we go after in 28, as opposed to gotta go and get new. Because there's no guarantee that that will come, right?
So we
So
have time.
we have time to
Position
evaluate it. It is a concern, and it's a concern amongst all taxing authorities. But as I said, it's from everything I'm hearing, it's got the legs to pass and get enacted. So,
It would be a concern as well to the people we fund. I mean, it's
to the organizations, yes, but
to everybody.
it's concerned all the taxing authorities. So, I mean, we're not, obviously, you're well aware of the other entities that use this as well. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of bad news there. It removes a tool. I personally do not believe that taxpayers don't understand the difference between a replacement and a renewal. We've always been very transparent in the way we run our and the way we communicate the difference. And you know, I like to think that entities that do run the replacement do the same thing. So unfortunately, we'll know here at the end of June or July. And it actually might come out before, it's ahead of schedule and it's not connected to the sub-bill budget, but it could end up in there. But chances are it's probably gonna go on its own and pass, so. A little disturbing. So a couple other things real quickly. If you haven't registered for the May 1st recognition ceremony, please do so rather quickly. Seats are filling up. There is a QR code right over there at the table. Use your phone, scan it, and get registered, please. It's our premier event. There's 225 seats, and we've changed the location to the zoo. I think it's the Malawi Center. Did I say that right? Malawi. Beautiful venue. And we got a great group of awardees this time as well. Parking off the trail. We'll have, for those who don't want to trek, we will have, I believe we're having carts to move people back and forth. And then finally, we are planning to hold a small Danny's Place fundraiser for May 28th, and you all trustees will be getting an invitation. That'll be on the 28th. Is it
Wednesday.
Wednesday at between starting at 5:30 to 7:30 on site at Danny's Place. So we'll get you that information as soon as we are able to. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Scott.
I just want to remind everybody, to Take Back Drug Day. The last Saturday in April. I can't forget about prevention, so you take back your drugs. Yes,
Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you.
you know I always remind you.
That is not something I'm aware of. That's something that probably should be, yeah, that's something that should be discussed with them.
Friday, because we're leaving town on Saturday.
Session.
Quite a bit going on at One Government Center. I'll try to be brief. Last Thursday, Plan Commission met 4.5 hours. The first 2.5 hours were devoted to that Angola Road facility where they're going to dump all the spent lime. But they disapproved that, so now it goes to City Council. They will need a supermajority if they want to approve that. The group homes for the mentally ill at 1111 Mason and 3305 Franklin were both approved. Nobody showed up, so I anticipate those will be approved at City Council next month. Yesterday, County Commissioners met. Anita Lopez is not happy with the way that boards like this one and Children's Services Board and TARDA have their, she's concerned they have way too many county employees on these boards. And she wants that to be curtailed, and she wants to make some major changes. The phrase rubber stamping was used. It sounds like there's some kind of disagreement going on there. As far as Children's Services Board, they did pass, what is it, MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. They are going to pay back the county for all of the renovations that they did for this building. Originally, the county was going to issue bonds. They've scrapped that. And it looks, well, according to what they passed yesterday, July the 1st this year up until 2034, the Children's Services Board will pay them back $427,303 a year. That's a lot of money, but that will cover all of the renovations that took place for Children's Services Board to move from 701 Adams into this building. Just came from in the middle of a lengthy meeting at City Council. TPD is accepting an award of $28,000 for domestic violence. Carrie Hartman said she's not happy. She wants to see TPD give them a lot more information on domestic violence. And it sounds like she wants TPD to devote more officers to investigating it. That's what it sounded like to me. This was not on the agenda. It was just a standard, let's accept this money. So I would anticipate probably in 2 weeks at agenda review, you'll probably see more about that. But it sounds like City Council wants a lot more to be done by TPD to investigate domestic violence. And tomorrow, the big one. City Council zoning and planning. Well, they're going to start with 4 tobacco shops, one of which is on Glendale right across from a tobacco shop that was approved last month. So I don't know what they're going to do. My guess is if people show up to complain, they might not approve them, but if they don't, I think they're going to approve them. And Toledoans won't have to go very far to get their nicotine fix. And then on the agenda, what do we want to call it? Assurance Plus Incorporated will ask for both a zone change and a special use permit to open a 52-bed inpatient facility in the old rescue building. It passed unanimously at Plan Commission last month. They had a public meeting at Kent Library. It did not go well, but I didn't really expect it to. But City Council will observe this tomorrow. And I tried to think, what's going to be going through their minds tomorrow? Will probably the news of the day, that this guy and tried to burn down the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania, tried to kill him and his family. His mother said, yep, he's mentally ill, he's off his meds. Trump has already weighed in, called the guy a whack job. Nothing surprising about that. They're really thinking about that. There's another guy in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's where the first attempt was on Trump's life. He's now been arrested for making threats. And then you have this, 17-year-old in Wisconsin that shot both of his parents to death so he could steal $14,000. As usual, he's got a manifesto and it says, let's have a race war. Let's kill all our politicians. He wanted to kill both Trump and Vance. Yeah, oh, by the way, I am praying that we get to summer without another school shooting, because if we do, Trump will have a photo op. He'll come out and take his picture with the survivors and give the same lame speech about let's start putting them back in psychiatric hospitals. So yeah, I think when city council considers this tomorrow, I think it's safe to say that every politician in this country right now is considering their own personal safety and the safety of their families in addition to the safety of their constituents. I've been talking to city council members. I think it has enough votes to pass. They're not saying to me, we think it'll be a great facility. They're saying we got to do something. But they'll be talking about a 52 inpatient bed facility tomorrow. I don't know. If I had to bet the ranch on it, I think they will approve it. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. So there is quite a bit going on at city council. Thank you.